Frank, I think in your initial press conference last year, the first thing that you talked about was the defensive identity of a team and sort of how that's always been the leader. And I just wonder, with the new acquisitions, kind of plus the core or a good amount of the core from last year, how do you see that evolving into this into this season now?
Well, we're going to have to be even better. The first thing you have to understand about going into a repeat is that it's going to be harder than the year before. The bullseye is going to be bigger, and we played longer than everybody else, had a shorter offseason than everybody else. So the odds are stacked against us from that standpoint. And the identity of what and who we were last year has got to be repeated. If we're going to try to repeat as champions, we've got to have the defense mindset. That's going to be the first message of day one of camp, and togetherness. Sharing the basketball and selflessness. Those two things were pillars for us last year, and that'll have to be the same for this year.
And Frank, of course, we all got the news yesterday with LeBron and AD and their plans to stick around for a while. How much does that, as a coach, center what you're doing, whether it's building an offense, building a defense? How much does go around those two, and what kind of luxury is that for you as a coach?
Well, obviously, those two guys are the cornerstones of our franchise, and everything's going to be built around them. Similarly to the way we structured things last year. That's the way it's going to be going forward. We're extremely grateful and lucky to have those guys, with our team, to lead our team for years going forward. And like I said, those two guys are going to be pillars for us.
Okay, next up, Bill Oram, please.
Hi, Frank. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Bill.
Last year, you guys functioned with LeBron, obviously, as your primary playmaker and point guard. And Dennis Schroder told us the other day that he would like to start. I'm assuming you haven't, or at least you wouldn't tell us if you've made a decision on that yet, given that there hasn't been a practice.
Correct. Way too soon for that. But definitely going to give strong consideration to Dennis in the starting lineup, as we will with some other guys. But it's definitely way too soon for that.
As a follow-up, could I ask you to share maybe what you see as some of the benefits of having LeBron playing with a traditional point guard versus the benefits maybe of having Dennis come off the bench and the things you'll be weighing?
Well, the great thing about Dennis is, Dennis is effective off the basketball, attacking in second side action. And he's effective with the basketball, initiating offense. And, that's why, we feel like he's a great fit to play alongside LeBron, because he can play in both roles. So there's benefits to both, and, we'll evaluate as we get into camp and, see what lineups are going to be best for us to win games.
Okay, next up, Kyle Goon.
Hey, Frank. I know the off season was too short because you don't look like you're tan enough for having just won a championship 2 months ago. Sort of based on that, with the short off season, and you have a week to go before your first preseason game. How do you plan on balancing sort of the fact that a lot of guys haven't gone through their normal off-season training regimens and may not show up in the shape that you're used to seeing them, but also you got games to play and the season starts in 3 weeks or whatever it is?
Yeah, it's our first big challenge of the year is trying to strike that balance the right way. We want to make sure that we're easing guys in that do not have a normal off season. The guys that are returning from playing in the championship last year with our team. We don't want to overdo it early with those guys, but at the same time, the games are coming up very quickly. So we also want to ease in so much that we make them vulnerable for those games to injury. So we're going to have to on a day-to-day basis try to strike that balance, not overdo it early and make them vulnerable to injuries in camp, while still getting them ready so that they're not vulnerable when the games come around.
And just as a quick follow-up, is there anything specific to this next week that you feel like is dramatically different from the way you might usually start a training camp?
The whole thing is dramatically different. I think it's dramatically different league-wide, but in particular for our team that played along with the Miami Heat later than everybody else. But the thing about the pandemic is, most teams are not able to play the normal, month of pickup games, that everybody's used to coming into a camp. You get all the bumps and bruises and those things underway before camp even begins. And then the intensity level increases when camp begins. So without that, again, we're just going to have to keep a close eye on the ramp up, to getting these guys ready to play. We got to get them moving with the training camp intensity. We got to get them playing live basketball with training camp intensity, but we got to do it probably in small doses early and just try to build it up as we get closer to the regular season.
Okay, Dave McMenamin.
Hey, Frank, good to see you. You opened up training camp last year by saying when you play the Lakers, you're going to get hit. It's going to play a smash mouth version of basketball. How quickly do you feel like last year's team adopted that persona that you wanted them to play with? And how do you get this year's group to do it with the new faces?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. I think we picked that up and adapted that identity right away last year. We must do the same again. This is part of the formula that worked for us to win a championship is being a team that on a daily basis plays harder than our opponent every night and plays more physical. And the guys that we've brought in here are nasty dudes. the new players that we brought in. When you look at Mark's physicality and Trez and Dennis at the guard position carries a nasty disposition. Wes Matthews, these guys are all physical dudes and have that sort of edge to them that I think that they'll embrace right away. And obviously the group that's returning knows the value in what we created last year, and hopefully we'll establish that early on.
Okay, Dan Wyke, please.
Hey, Frank. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Dan.
Were you surprised at sort of the amount of roster turnover that kind of happened this year? I know, we're talking potentially a couple new starters, definitely new bench pieces of significance. Is that exciting for you? Do you think that makes sort of the challenge ahead of you guys a little more palatable because you've got new blood, or I guess kind of how do you view that?
Well, was I surprised? You never know what to expect going into an off season, especially when you've had the success that we had when you win a championship. In whatever sport you're talking about, going back as many years as you want to, other teams always want your players when you win. So, there's always a competition to keep your guys, your core guys around. And, we knew that was going to play out. And you also have a situation when you win a championship and have an opportunity to win a championship again, to have great players that want to come play for you. So these are always very, very extremely difficult decisions to make. And, I think we made, some changes, but largely have our core back. And, I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about each guy that is coming in here to be a Laker, brings something that has me very excited about how that's going to help this year's team be slightly different and hopefully even better than where we were last year.
Frank, is it pretty safe to assume that we're not going to see a ton of LeBron in these 4 preseason games? Is that a safe bet?
We'll see. Like I said, we don't want to underdo it. And then he's not ready to play in real games, but, obviously don't want to overdo it as well. So I really don't know where that's going to land, but I would expect that, we'll probably see him some, but not a ton. Enough for him to get ready for opening night.
Thanks.
Okay, next up, Mike Bresnahan.
Hey, Frank, good to see you again. It's been a little while. Kind of a similar question to what Bill was asking earlier about Schroder, but at the center position. How do you kind of see that working out between who's going to start among the new guys, Montrez and Marc Gasol? And also, will AD still get some time late in the game, potentially at the 5?
Yeah, all questions that I feel like are probably still a little bit too soon to answer. But I think both guys obviously are starter level players. You know, Mark having been a starter his whole career, Trez being a sixth man of the year type of role. You play starter minutes in the role that he's played in the past. You know, so both of those guys have that ability. But we also know that AD playing at the 5 with alongside Markieff Morris won us a championship last year. So you know, these are this is basically a lot of different ways we can go with this. We're going to see see how these guys fit alongside one another. You know, I think watching them play together and seeing how the combinations work, is the biggest factor in these types of decisions, and we haven't seen any of that yet. Along with conversations with these guys and what roles they're going to be most comfortable in. You know, I really take pride as a head coach in making sure I hear the player. Whatever player you're dealing with and what role is important to them, and for me to try to create that role for them, because if they feel good about their role, they're going to run through a wall. So those conversations are still to be had, and obviously the combinations of guys playing together in camp is still in front of us as well. So there's a lot of different ways we can go with that.
Next up, Jim Hill. Do we have Jim?
Now, hey, Coach, how are you?
Good to see you, Jim.
Yeah, congratulations. You just got through talking about a certain amount of nastiness in individual players. Are you saying that your team needs a little bit of nastiness to defend the championship?
I do. I do think that we need that. And like I said, the bullseye is going to be bigger this year than it was last year, and our guys, like I said, played longer than everybody else did last year and have a shorter offseason. So this is going to be a more difficult run for us than last year's season was, even though last year was very challenging as well. And, I think the disposition, and edginess, chip on your shoulder, whatever phrases you want to use, are going to be necessary in competing and in the regular season and setting a tone for who we're going to be, and what our identity is going to look like.
One other thing, Coach, would you say the championship you just won was the most difficult in sports this year because of the bubble? You were gone so long, the pandemic, and all these things that were surrounding it.
I think so, but look, it's so difficult to win a championship in any environment, in any sport. So I don't want to pull away from what anybody else was able to accomplish. I know the set of circumstances and adversity that last year's team faced to win that championship, I think is unprecedented. It really is when you just look at the totality of it, and it's really remarkable. For our guys to have been able to persevere through that, and I couldn't be more prouder of them.
Thanks, Coach, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Next up, Alan Sliwa.
Hey, Coach. Just coming off a championship and, obviously the offseason that you guys had, adding some great additional pieces. How do you just make sure that the team isn't maybe overconfident? A lot of people are picking the Lakers to repeat. Do you lean on a lot of the vets? Can you kind of just walk through what your thought process is in that, knowing that the team's going to be heavy favorites?
Yeah, look, just having coached LeBron and Anthony for a year, they've got the right perspective on this. You know what I mean? And they take nothing for granted. Been talking to them day to day throughout the year last year, and talking about the challenges coming forward this year. Like they understand it's going to be harder. It doesn't matter what people are going to say about our team and our talent level and whether we're the favorites or not. Like none of that really matters to those guys. They know how hard it is, and they know all the work and sacrifice and commitment that goes into playing for that championship and reaching that goal. So, I really am not worried about that. I think our group has the right perspective.
Okay, Joe Varden.
Hi, Frank. Joe Varden from The Athletic.
Good to see you, Joe.
Hey, it's good to see you as well. You've been kind of answering this, I think, but I want to ask you directly. One of the things that you said all throughout the regular season last year was you wanted the Lakers to dominate, and you guys, you attacked the regular season with a sense of urgency that, like, frankly, most LeBron teams don't, and it was notable. But now you're coming off not only a title, but the shortest offseason in NBA history. And so can you take that same approach? Like, can you ask this team to have that kind of urgency, like in December and January after literally just winning a title in October?
100% yes. We will play every minute of every regular season game like it's the championship because that's part of what won for us in the playoffs last year is that mindset that every time we're on the floor, we're playing harder than our opponent, period. And we're carrying more than our opponent, period. Like, this is just a way of life for us. And if I talk about, so we're not unclear, if I talk about easing into this season, it's really about understanding where guys are from a conditioning standpoint, from an off-season recovery standpoint, and just making sure that there's a proper build-up in camp with that. But when we get into the season, for sure, every game that we play, we're playing to play harder than our opponent and care more about that night's victory than our opponent, because that's the number one habit that you can build throughout the regular season is the habit of winning. And having that mindset every time we stepped on the floor paid dividends for us in the playoffs. And that's going to be the mindset this year. And what I like about it is that doesn't have to mean guys are going to play 45 minutes a night. We have such great depth that we can balance that out while still having the 5 guys on the floor competing like hell.
Okay, just a couple more here. Melissa Rowland.
Hey, Frank, how you doing?
Good, Melissa. How you doing?
Good. I'm curious, considering how both physically and mentally grueling the bubble was. I'm curious, what was your guys' reaction when you guys found out just how quick the turnaround was actually going to be?
Well, I don't want to answer for other people. I know different players and different coaches have different perspectives on this, even within our group. The players, I think in particular, they are mindful of the physical recovery that goes into starting a new season. So I think they would prefer more time, but you'd have to ask them. Me personally, individually, I was okay with it. I would prefer to see the NBA get back on as regular schedule as possible, even if that meant, we have to start a little bit sooner than, all of us would have liked. I just think that's it's good for the league. It's good for all of us involved, to not stretch a season out into October again. And to do that, you have to start sooner. So, me individually, I was okay with this start time.
Okay, and last question, Jordan Richard.
Hi, Frank. How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about the floor spacing you get with Marcus Stahl, running him off of pick and pop situations? Also with Montrez, he's very good in the left block with isolating and post ups. So do you have a plan with Trez in terms of getting him post touches and just with Marcus Stahl and pick and pop situations?
Yeah, for sure. We intend to use both of those guys in those ways. And, Mark's spacing, is not just about the pick and pop game. He brings a different dynamic to our team from a standpoint of having the size that we had last year at the center position when we played JaVale and Dwight, but also having, a different approach. Both of those guys were rollers. We lose that aspect of position. In terms of the lob threat, but Mark as a roller is a great passer, one of the best passers in the league at that position, And, his spacing at the 3-point line, whether it's, running flow offense through him at the top of the key, whether he's feeding the post Anthony and drawing the center away from the basket, or like you said, doing a pick and pop game or spotting him up in the corner, top of the key when AD's rolling. All of those are different dynamics than we had last year. But I don't want to negate the fact that we're going to still have him roll into the basket and have either finish in or making passes inside out, which is one of his specialties. So, he's going to bring a different dynamic for us there. And, Trez is just a monster, man. Like you put the ball in his hands on the low block or in the short roll game, similar to what we were talking about with Mark. He's a beast finishing at the basket and making plays as well. So, both of those guys, are going to give us a huge lift, in those situations.
Okay, and I actually lied. I have one last question for Maximilian.
Thank you. Hi, Coach. My name is Max. I'm with the German Newswire DPA. I was wondering the other day when Dennis Schroder was talking to us, he was making it pretty clear that he sees himself as a starter for the Lakers. What's your take on that? And also what do you like about him as a player and what makes him a good fit for the Lakers? Thank you.
Yeah, I welcome, his input on that. And, obviously those things are going to play out through camp. He'll receive strong consideration for that. I do know that he's going to be one of our most important players and a big minutes player for us. My impressions of him as a player is I love his edge, that he plays with, the demeanor, the nasty competitor side of him, is something that you hate playing against, but you love it when he's on your team. And, I'm thrilled about it. He's one of the fastest guys in the league. And we were a great fast breaking team last year. So I think he's only going to add to what we do in that regard. I've always called him the speeding bullet, when we played against him, like, okay, what are we going to do about the speeding bullet? How are we going to slow him down? And I'm just thrilled to have him on our roster. There's probably very few coaches in the league that are bigger fans of his game than I am. And, just excited that we were able to have this trade happen and bring him into the Lakers purple and gold.